Connor's working a gimmick. The whole thing's an angle. I'm into that whole thing. But he is starting to mark out for himself. He's starting to forget that this whole I'm Money McGregor, taking a page from Floyd's book, but that's just fine. You can steal a guy's idea. Go ahead and run with it. He forgot that was just a marketing angle. That's not who you are. You're the son of a plumber who's living with your parents and you were on the dole. And now you made it. And it's exciting. And you did it through hard work. And you did it through some luck. And you had a lot of people help you. But either way, it was a story of a dream. He's marking out for his own gimmick. And he's forgetting who he really is. And it's a turnoff. I'm still turned on, right? I think we all are. We still want to see it. But it's a turn off. I'm here because you want to be here. I'm willing to part with my money because this is your dream and your goal and you're chasing it. I'm not willing to do that for any other reason. So be careful with this. Run the marketing. Get the headline. Do the whole thing. But remember, you're Conor McGregor. You're not Money McGregor. You're not any of those things. And don't mark out for your own gimmick. And that's a slippery slope. Because we are, as people, as human beings, we are whoever we pretend to be. And if you pretend to be somebody long enough, you will become that person. Actors do it all the time. The great actor, they really get into role. They get into that character. They believe it. But then they fade to black and roll the credits, and they go back to their real life after a few months. When you're a fighter, I see professional wrestlers are most guilty of this, but the fighters are too, and you're living a character and a gimmick, and those 3 months don't go by, and then you get to go read a new script and go play something else or go back to your regular life. When you don't get that reset button, when it becomes 7 days a week, over and over again, these guys forget this is an act. This is who I really am. They forget. Those lines get blurred. The human mind does that. It's brainwashing. You brainwash yourself. You say something enough times, you believe it, it becomes true. Don't do that. Live the gimmick. Get the headlines. Sell the seats. And then go back and be a real person. It's important for your health. Yeah, and I tell you what, holding your spot, it's a hard thing. When somebody takes it, you don't get it back. But the other part of that is you do not get better at something by not doing it. And Conor is not doing something. Now, the good news for Conor, much like John Jones, the gap between him and everybody else we found is pretty significant. Conor could get worse and still be the world champion. He could. There are guys that, I think Khabib and Tony, I think those are pretty interesting fights. But, yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand the delays. If it's something you want to do, get out there and do it. That would be my advice. But I will have to concede. He is a guy that's figured this out. He's done a very good job. And I think instead of people criticizing, perhaps he is somebody you should learn from. But nobody's infallible. And there's always things we could look at and say, hey, you might want to rethink this one. And I am watching the guy mark out for his own gimmick. And over time, that doesn't work. I mean, that leads to some very bad things. Stories end very poorly. When you take a young man and you give him power and you give him money, that story does not end well. It's important to stay grounded in some way. So go do the media, have your fun with that. When the cameras go off, go back to being yourself. And I don't know. I don't know him well enough personally or what he's up to. I could be wrong in that assessment. And maybe I'm the mark. Maybe I'm just falling for what he's doing. But I feel like I've seen this. This story play out a lot of times before, and I feel like there's a little bit of danger there for him. So let's see.
KO. Round 4. Fight. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. Great. Round three. Fight. KO. Round four. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO. You win.
これですっきりしたわい。次。ほら、足。ほっ。ほっ。ふんふん。ほっ。ふん。よ。ふんよ。よ。よ。は。ふんは。シュシュ。は。ふん。ほら。よ。
New challenger. New challenger. New challenger.
shoot. Gah! Ha ha ha. You. Gah! Ha ha ha. Hoop shoot. Hoop shoot. Shoot.
New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round one. Fight. KO. Round two. Fight. KO. Round three. Fight.
forget that this whole I'm Money McGregor, taking a page from Floyd's book, but that's just fine. You can steal a guy's idea. Go ahead and run with it. He forgot that was just marketing. That's not who you are. You're the son of a plumber that was living with your parents and you were on the dole. And now you made it. And it's exciting. And you did it through hard work. And you did it through some luck. And you had a lot of people help you. But either way, it was a story of a dream. He's marking out for his own gimmick. And he's forgetting who he really is. And it's a turnoff. I'm still turned on, right? I think we all are. We still want to see it. But it's a turn off. I'm here because you want to be here. I'm willing to part with my money because this is your dream and your goal and you're chasing it. I'm not willing to do that for any other reason. So be careful with this. Run the marketing, get the headline, do the whole thing. But remember, you're Conor McGregor. You're not Money McGregor. You're not any of those things. And don't mark out for your own gimmick. And that's a slippery slope because we are, as people, as human beings, we are whoever we pretend to be. And if you pretend to be somebody long enough, you will become that person. Actors do it all the time. The great actors, they really get into role. They get into that character. They believe it. But then they fade to black and roll the credits, and they go back to their real life after a few months. When you're a fighter, and I see professional wrestlers are most guilty of this, but the fighters are too, and you're living a character and a gimmick, and those 3 months don't go by, and then you get to go read a new script and go play something else or go back to your regular life. When you don't get that reset button, when it becomes 7 days a week, over and over again, these guys forget this is an act. This is who I really am. They forget. Those lines get blurred. The human mind does that. It's brainwashing. You brainwash yourself. You say something enough times, you believe it, it becomes true. Don't do that. Live the gimmick. Get the headlines. Sell the seats. And then go back and be a real person. It's important for your health. Yeah, and I tell you what, holding your spot, it's a hard thing. When somebody takes it, you don't get it back. But the other part of that is you do not get better at something by not doing it. And Conor is not doing something. Now, the good news for Conor, much like John Jones, the gap between him and everybody else we found is pretty significant. Conor could get worse and still be the world champion. He could. There are guys that, I think could be even Tony. I think those are pretty interesting fights. But yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand the delays. If it's something you want to do, get out there and do it. That would be my advice. But I will have to concede. He is a guy that's figured this out. He's done a very good job. And I think instead of people criticizing, perhaps he is somebody you should learn from. But nobody's infallible. And there's always things we can look at and say, hey, you might want to rethink this one. And I am watching a guy mark out for his own gimmick. And over time, that doesn't work. I mean, that leads to some very bad things. Some stories end very poorly. When you take a young man and you give him power and you give him money, that story does not end well. It's important to stay grounded in some way. So go do the media, have your fun with that. When the cameras go off, go back to being yourself. And I don't know. I don't know him well enough personally or what he's up to. I could be wrong in that assessment. And maybe I'm smart. Maybe I'm just falling for what he's doing. But I feel like I've seen this. I've seen this story play out a lot of times before, and I feel like there's a little bit of danger there for him. So let's see where that all goes.
Most of the women's stories are, but it is, I think, more like kind of funny. He came to the Comedy Store, and I went on stage in the main room, and then I left, and then Tommy called me, and he was like, "Oh, Harvey Weinstein came here to see you. He's here. You need to come back and talk to him." And I was like already at the Improv or already like whatever, And I was like, I don't want to go back. And then the only reason I did not go back, at first I was like, fuck him for just like summoning me to come back. I'm making $22 at the Comedy Store. Like, I don't, you know, and it already took me 40 minutes to get out of the Comedy Store parking lot. I can't go back in there. And I remember literally just being like, the lighting in there is bad. I don't want him to see me.
The lighting is bad.
Like, the lighting on stage is great. Like, he saw me at my best, and I really don't want to go back and like talk to him. I don't like know how to do small talk with the producers. I'm not, you know me, I'm like a neurotic mess. Like, I'm not good at like charming and whatever. But
That
yeah.
is such a crazy way to think of things. The
insane.
lighting there was perfect.
Yeah.
Hi, it's going to be, everything
saw
after
me.
that's a disaster. I got to go.
Like, he saw me at my best. Like, let me just get the fuck out of here. But like, I didn't know how bad it was, but I knew, you know, it's like the kind of thing that it's like, we didn't know what we didn't know.
Don't you feel a little guilty though? Like what you're saying, what I'm getting is that people saying that to you, you feel like, oh,
Of course.
I didn't do it. I'm not.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
that there's a lot of women that kind of have done nothing wrong, but were consumed with guilt and shame. Like,
Men
should I-
too.
Yeah. But I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I'm just
Yeah.
not hearing a lot of that. I'm not hearing a lot of empathy, and maybe I'm just like zoning in on negative comments. Or,
I've never had a female employee, and I've never worked in an office. But even though you hear all this sexual harassment shit, and you go, did I do anything?
Yeah.
You gotta check. Seems like everybody did something.
But it's like, but we were the same way. It's like, I mean, I remember working on a talk show, and everyone's like, oh, well, does that count? That's not as bad as
Right.
rape. Like, getting granular about it. Like,
Right.
I remember I worked on a talk show, late night talk show, and a guy came up to me in front of like a couple of the writers, and he took his hand and like put it between my butt cheeks and just went like swiped, and he was like, it's like a credit card machine. And like everybody started laughing. And of course I started laughing because I
Right.
froze and I was embarrassed.
Was he your friend?
No, he was like my coworker. Like, you know.
Okay.
And it was just kind of a dick comedy writer. And I was like, what do I do? What am I going to do? I mean, at the time, I had no concept that it was offensive. I was emotionally so numb and unconscious in my 20s. Like, I didn't even think to do anything about it. But looking back, I'm like, that was fucked up. But what was I going to call human resources and say that there's all these little tiny things that aren't enough to be assault, but are too much to be appropriate. And it's just like a gray area that I don't, it's hard for us to delineate what makes sense and what doesn't.
Well, it's funny how cautious you are now. I mean, we're good friends, but we were joking around. We had these hoverboards.
Yeah.
And we were rolling around these hoverboards.
If I had fallen, you would not have caught me because you didn't want to touch me.
Well, what
That's
you'd
my
said,
fear.
But what you had said was hilarious. You wanted to say something about a
That's right.
porn,
That's right.
but you weren't sure if you could talk about it
Yeah.
because you were worried that you bringing up a porn
Yeah.
would somehow or another be sexually harassing. And I had to say, like, hey, that doesn't work. You can't do that to men. Like, you say whatever the fuck you want.
I remember.
I'll give you license right now publicly. Say whatever the fuck you want forever. You can't sexually harass me.
Women feel it too. Like, I don't want to.
Well, you would
Look
feel
at
like
me,
a
I'm
hypocrite,
stuttering. I'm
right?
panicking. Exactly. I
Right.
don't want to be a hypocrite.
Right.
And, I've been coming back to the Comedy Store a lot, and I hadn't been there in the last like 6 months. I've been working on something, and I noticed when I used to go to the Comedy Store, I used to feel like prey, or any comedy club. It was like, people would hug you too long, and you were just waiting to kind of like have something inappropriate happen. I went in the other night, not one man hugged me. Everyone was like, hello, m'lady. People were like bowing at me. No one would come near me like I was a fucking leper. Donnell Rawlings came up to me and gave me a hug, and halfway through he was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Am I allowed to do that? And I was just like, oh, whoa, like this is fucking crazy. The tables have turned, because it used to be women were terrified of men, and now men are kind of terrified of women.
Definitely guys are afraid of being called out. There's a lot of that. And a lot of guys
Are
going
you
over there.
afraid if you don't
Round one.
have skeletons in your closet, though?
Fight.
If you're afraid if you don't?
If you don't, are you afraid because you know you have some shit?
Well, here's the thing. You don't have to have skeletons in your closet.
Sure.
You can just have a bad relationship.
Sure.
Where someone's mad at you. Like, this Aziz Ansari thing is very bizarre. Like, this seems like he went on a bad date, and they took turns eating each other out and blowing each other. And then she didn't like it, and she said that there was like, I don't know what the fuck happened because I wasn't
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people
Yeah.
that are picking sides on this.
And I'm not accusing or supporting either side, because I don't think there's enough information yet, and it all seems very like he had one experience, she had one experience, and if they're both telling the truth, who fucking knows. But here's what I'll say just about my experience in my 20s as a woman is I was not fully formed yet at 22 years old. I didn't know.
No one is.
I had literally no sex I wanted to have in my 20s. I didn't
Well,
want to have
we understand that now, that the frontal lobe is not really fully formed in human beings
Correct.
until you're 25.
Correct. So, hey, guys in your 30s and 40s, stop dating 20-year-olds. Just in general, it's just a bad idea, you know? And I think that a really big part of the conversation that, for me, a blind spot is sexual abuse victims.
Yes.
So the statistics are a little foggy, but like 1 out of 6 women are sexually assaulted as children, and those are only the people that come forward.
Is that real?
Yes.
1 out of 6?
1 out of 6 is the statistic for people that come forward. That's not even including the people that don't come forward, which is a lot. Which, and not to get too serious,
Did you see that fucking Olympic? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
did you see that Olympic thing?
it makes me crazy.
That Olympic thing is insane. The Olympic gymnastics coach, or doctor rather, that was molesting all those girls.
It makes me homicidal.
And when they're doing the testimony, the girls, he's saying that this is too uncomfortable for him to listen to these girls.
If I saw that guy on the street, I think I'd kill him with my hands. I'd have to. I would go batshit crazy. So I don't talk about this publicly because I'm too embarrassed. That's the other thing about this. I think that guys, some guys, have this idea that us being sexually harassed is like fun for us, and we like want to come forward, and there's some glory in it. It's embarrassing and it's awful. And I don't talk about my sexual assault publicly because I just like freeze up. And
But you're very self-aware. There are people that take some sort of glory in being victimized.
Maybe I can't speak to that.
I mean, what I mean by that is to the point where they will exaggerate any sort of interaction with someone. So there's people
Maybe.
that men and women.
So
right?
here's what I'll say. That could be true. I don't know enough about the science of that, and I'm not a psychiatrist. But
Right.
my experience was the opposite. I minimized mine. I didn't come to
Most
terms.
people do.
I didn't come to terms with the fact that I was sexually assaulted until I was 32. I'm 35. Like, I just kind of figured this shit out, and there's a lot of stuff that is still blind spots that I don't want to deal with. And I was only able to write about it in my book because I can't talk about it publicly.
Right.
Like, I freeze up, I get weird and scared. And one of the trauma responses of if you've been sexually assaulted as a child is that when a man moves towards you or you have any kind of sexual, see, I'm like getting all nervous. When you have a sexual interaction, you freeze up. Because when you were sexually assaulted as a child, it didn't serve you to fight back, and you had to kind of disassociate. And
Right, that's why people get confused with it, fight or flight. It's
Sure.
not just fight or flight. Freeze is
huge.
a big one.
I have a freeze response
and I should
around
be
sex.
clear about what I'm saying so nobody misconstrues this. What I'm saying, I'm not talking about real victimization. I'm talking about people that love to play the victim.
Sure.
There are a lot of people, I'm not talking about real victim. When I
Sure.
say that people take glory in victimization,
Yes.
I don't mean someone who's actually been sexually assaulted. I mean someone who may have had a weird interaction with a person when they said something to them.
And by the way,
Or-
I've done that. Like, you know, I get bumped at the Comedy Store, and I'm like, can you fucking believe I got bumped? It's like I just am getting adrenaline and dopamine from like being self-righteous or having been wronged or something. I know what you mean from that perspective, but I think when it's something real,
Yeah.
my reaction is to completely
Freezing
hide.
is a big one.
Yeah, so it's like for me.
That's also a big one with assault. If people get not just sexual things, but physical assault. One of the things that happens to people when they're confronted by someone in a dangerous situation is they panic and they freeze. They don't do anything. They literally can't move.
So if at least 20% of women have that, who knows what the fuck is going on in some of these interactions. So for me, like in my 20s, when a guy came towards me, I would freak out. And people go, well, why didn't they say no? Why didn't they leave? Because I'm fucking frozen and I don't know what to do. And
Anybody that says that has never been involved in any sort of real altercation when they're in danger. Anybody says, why didn't you just... Well, you don't know why you didn't do things.
Yeah.
Like, there's times in my life when I look back, I'm like, why didn't I fucking say something?
Yeah.
Or why didn't I tell that guy to fuck off? Or what? You don't know what to do sometimes.
And that's a lot of, I mean, that was me in my whole 20s. Why didn't I tell him no? Why didn't I
Yeah.
leave? Why didn't I tell him to stop? Like, you know, so a lot of it I didn't even understand because I was too young to.
Right.
And it took me 15 years of a 12-step program and therapy and EMDR to even be able to
What's
say.
EMDR?
EMDR, eye movement reprogramming and desensitization.
How the fuck would you expect anyone to know what that means where you could just yell, just say that?
Here's what I'll say. Your fans are so fucking smart and like they're such neurology nerds.
Yeah, but that's off the deep end.
Well, I mean,
EMDR.
it's
I've never heard of that
EMDR.
shit
It's
in all my life.
It's a post-traumatic stress disorder therapy. It was started for Vietnam vets, and it helps you to sort of deactivate traumatic experiences.
Have you ever done ecstasy?
No.
Yeah,
Nope.
MDMA therapy is supposed to be amazing for people that have gone through trauma.
I've been told about this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Coachella next year and try that.
I don't know if that's the place, but it's supposed to be amazing for people that have gone through real traumatic experiences that are just so ingrained in their mind. Like the memories of those experiences are ingrained with trauma and horrible feelings. And somehow or another, MDMA therapy allows people to separate from that and lose the trigger and like lose this.
That sounds like a way
reoccurring-
more fun way to do it because
Yeah.
EMDR is like you sort of have to relive the memory and then other shit gets unearthed and things start clicking into focus.
Well, the reason why they call it ecstasy is because that's literally what you feel. You feel so much love, and what hit.
it
I
just
only
floods
did it
your
once.
brain with dopamine.
Yes.
Right?
And I only did it once, but the thing that stunned me was how comparatively insecure I am in regular life.
Comparatively insecure. Can you say that?
Comparatively insecure compared to when you're on ecstasy.
Oh,
When
got
you're
it.
on
You have no
ecstasy, you're-
inhibitions
None,
and-
zero. You're so friendly
Oh,
and
wow.
so warm and
But
so
you're always like
affectionate.
that.
I try to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you're on ecstasy, you really realize like all the hitches in your personality, all the things that
Wow.
are holding you back. It made me. I only did it once, but it made me completely aware of insecurity that I didn't even know
That's
existed.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah, you do it. You trip out. It's very interesting.
I'm super into it. I had another friend recommend that, and I'd be down because it's also like, you know, and something else I'll say, not to speak for all women, like I'm not the face of all women, but like with this administration, if you're a sexual trauma survivor, seeing this fucking guy on the news every day can be really triggering.
Did you see his post about the Women's March? His Twitter
Joe,
post was
I
hilarious.
literally can't read the news anymore because I'm too activated, and I'm
Ooh,
going
activated.
crazy.
It's funny, you're in my thoughts. No, back up. You're not in my thoughts at all. You're a hiccup. And I kinda like my wish to win you. I can't act like I'm feeling and I can apply comments up above.
Daniel! Hop! Hop! You! You!
New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. You lose. Get ready for the next battle.
Entspann dich.
Round 1. Fight. KO. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO.
って出直してこい。
New challenger. New challenger. Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight. Perfect. Round 3. Fight. Perfect. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight.
ちほどにもないわ。ほら、よ、よ、よ、よ、は、
New challenger.
足、は、ふん、よ、てりゃ、てりゃ、てりゃ、てりゃ、足、てりゃ、てりゃ、は、は、てりゃ、は、シュッシュ、よ、ふん、シュッシュ、てりゃ、は、てりゃ、は、てりゃ、ふん。ふん、ふん、てりゃ、ふん、てりゃ、ふん、ふん、ほっ、ふん、てりゃ、てりゃ、ほっ、ほっ、シュッ、ほっ、てりゃ、よ、は、よ、よ、よ、ふん、シュッ、よ、よ、シュッ。
New challenger.
Shoot! Daniel! Shoot! Ha! Ha! Ashi! Daniel! Shoot! Ha! Daniel! Shoot! Daniel! Ha! Daniel! Hum! Daniel! Shoot! Ha! Daniel! Shoot! Daniel! Shoot! Daniel! Daniel! Shoot! Shoot! Ha! Shoot! Ha! Shoot! Ha! You! Ha! Ha! Hum! Knee! Ashi! You! Hum! You! 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 Hum! Shoot! You! Shoot! You! Hum!
New challenger.
Hum! You! Hum! You! Ha! 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 Daniel! Hum! Ha! Shoot! Daniel! Ha! Daniel! Daniel! You! Daniel! Daniel! Hum! You! Ha! Ha! Hum! Hana! Hop! Pow! Ha! You! Ha! 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 Hum! Ha! Hum! Shinei! Hum! Shinei! Ha! Hum! Shinei! Hum! Shinei! Ha! 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 Pow! Ha! Junior! Ha!
New challenger.
You! 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 Junior! Shoot! You! Shoot! Shoot!
New challenger.
Get ready for the next battle.
Perfect. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. KO.
出直してこい